Khan here, 4 seconds out. I've interviewed Eddie Hearn in the UK before. I haven't interviewed Eddie Hearns in the US. Eddie, how you doing?
Hanging around the room, haven't you? Listening, yeah. Eddie Hearns, Matchroom Sports. You know, it's just how it is now. Really, I think now they should put on the table. You know, the press conference is just Eddie Hearns. No one takes any notice that it doesn't have an S, but I like it. You know.
Thomas Hearns, Eddie Hearns, hard-hitting promoter. Very similar indeed. Look, Edgar Berlanga, he's been built up as a monster. Is he the monster that the public have built him up to be, do you feel?
I think we're going to find out on Saturday. I mean, the toughest test of his career. What I like about the fight is, if he's a hype job, he'll really struggle against Jason Quigley, and actually he'll probably get beat. But if he's what we believe he is, then he should look really good in going through him and showing him the levels. He just walks in the room, so I've got to be a little bit careful. But, you know, Saturday, mate. Good? So...
The best in the business right here is the one and only, man. Y'all got to understand, this is the best man in the business right now. Promoting business, the best ever.
We love it. You got to clip that bit out for me. Yeah. So if he's going to go through him, like he should go through him, you know, we're talking about Canelo Alvarez, we're talking about Golovkin, we're talking about Munguia, we're talking about all these big fights. So there's levels in boxing, as we know. This is a world-class opponent. It's not a world champion. It's not an elite top 3, top 4 guy, but it's a solid fighter and the toughest test of his career. So, listen, when I used to watch him, those first 16 fights, all of them were first round knockouts. Now, some of them in the opening 2 or 3 fights of his career, of course, were lesser opposition. But as he kept going and was knocking everyone out in the first round, you don't do that if you don't have significant power. He's got a massive fan base. You'll see on Saturday night, and this kid could be a big star.
How does he differ from the current and former super middleweights that you've dealt with in the past?
I think it's yet to be seen, you know, really. I mean, certainly at this stage in his career, with the opposition that he's been up against, I've not really seen a fan base like this being built from those guys fighting at this opposition. You know, we're going to be selling out the Hulu Theatre. We want to be selling out the main arena at Madison Square Garden. He will do that. I find it like, I was just doing an interview with New York Post there, and they were talking about Teofimo. Like, Teofimo should be an absolute superstar, shouldn't he? Like, I did a fight with Teofimo at the Hulu Theatre. We just crept over the line and sold it out. That was for the Undisputed Championship, or mostly the Undisputed Championship. He just boxed Josh Taylor. They couldn't sell it out. And it was a brilliant fight. Like, how can a kid from Brooklyn, who's as outspoken as he is, as talented as he is, who's as interesting as he is, not be a superstar? Because they haven't been built correctly on the way through. We're getting Edgar at the right time before he goes into those mega fights, you know. And he's going to be if he's as good as I think he is, he's going to be a superstar.
Canelo fight, the mega fight to make for him.
Yeah, it's massive. Mexico against Puerto Rico. But look, we could make that fight now, and he could knock out Quigley in 2 rounds, stand on the turnbuckle and say, "Canelo, Puerto Rico's coming for you." Still a big fight. But imagine if he beats Quigley and then beats Golovkin. Oh, you're talking about one of the biggest fights in the sport, and that's really where we want it to be.
What else takes a fancy that boxing fans should look out for on the card?
Adam Kanaki, you know, fighting for us for the first time. I mean, he's fighting Chris Amano, and you know, Kanaki might be done, and you might see him in his last fight on Saturday night, or if he puts in a great performance, then all of a sudden he's up there looking for big fights again in the division. Reshat Mati's in a fantastic fight as well. Yankee Riviera, a Puerto Rican Olympian, fantastic fight. Khalil Ko. It's a really good card, top to bottom. It's going to be ramped.
I noticed a slight change in ethos from yourself from interviews. I think you said it about Berlanga, like really who should be beating the fighter in front of him. You said it about Gary Cully. You said it about Ramla Ali as well. And a small change in ethos is a big change on camera. Is there a difference in terms of how you approach fighters who maybe take a loss now and maybe you feel they should have got the victory? In times of the past, you kind of really...
I mean, look, I get criticised. When a fighter loses, I get criticised publicly, mainly from other promoters. I mean, you saw it with Ramla Ali got knocked out. Oscar De La Hoya commented on the post from DAZN saying, more bad matchmaking by Eddie Hearn. I mean, so is good matchmaking only when it's a one-sided fight that your fighter wins? I don't understand. Ramla Ali stepped up to the challenge. She showed unbelievable heart. I become much more of a fan of Ramla Ali through that performance than I would have done if she was in a one-sided fight against a nobody. And I promise you, she'll be back better. Gary Cully, should be beating Jose Felix. If he doesn't, he ain't good enough right now. It doesn't mean you can't be good enough. You can come again, you can learn, and he will come back as a better fighter. But if we don't see upsets, what are we watching? Do you know what I mean? You have to make competitive fights.
What's the latest with Anthony Joshua? A lot of talk about Jarrell Miller being the potential opponent. You'll get a lot of backlash if that does happen.
No. If you've ever watched an interview with me about Jarrell Miller, I've said he'll never get the Anthony Joshua fight. We haven't had one discussion with anybody about Jarrell Miller for August 12th. Not AJ, not Dimitri Salita, nobody at all. And he's not fighting him on August the 12th.
Did you see our interview with Ben Shalom? He said he came out defiant, said he's built for the sport, even though he's had a bit of turbulence.
Listen, someone just asked me a question. I think it was IFL. Ben Shalom come out and said, I'm built for this. What's your response? Good luck to him. But what he's experienced so far is 1% of what he's going to experience in terms of the stress, the abuse, the lies. I've had it all for 10, 12 years. People trying to drive you out of the sport. So built for it, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's not very pleasant. It's not very pleasant. I mean, I saw a clip of it and I did feel a bit sorry for it. Like, he's
just picking that up with Eddie, who's whisked away to do a Zoom interview. Eddie, we were just saying about... And my battery weren't working. Yes, you're right. Yes, that's right. That's fair enough. We were saying about Ben Shalom. He defiantly came out and said, I'm built for this in an interview with Danny Flex. And I just wonder how you feel where he stands currently, given the turbulence he's had in his career so far.
No turbulence. He's been doing it for 2 years. I mean, in terms of, So, like I said, try doing 13 or 14 at the absolute biggest levels of the sport globally. As I said, the stick, the abuse, the lies, the manoeuvring, like it's grim. So if he's feeling it now, he should be worried, because I never felt it for about 7 or 8 years, maybe 10 years. But it's very, it's difficult. I'll never come out and said I'm built for it, because you have to take day by day. But good luck to him. He's on the being defiant, but he ain't seen the half of it. He ain't seen the 90% of it yet. But good luck to him. I think he's a young man, as I was once, and you get some people who ride the waves for years and years, like me a little bit, but particularly Arum and Warren and people like that. They're great survivors. They're a lot different characters to Ben. But I don't want to be somber about it, but you're gonna live a very unhappy life for the next 10 or 15 years, because that's just what happens. Like, maybe very unhappy is a bit harsh, but you know what I'm saying? Like a life of aggravation and very little sleep.
Ben's stance is that the back and forth stuff is bad for boxing. You've got the nick for it, in a sense, and it's seldom that you're upstaged in the back and forth stuff. How long does it take to get comfortable in that environment, and does it need to change?
The back and forth is just a part of it's the social media world that we live in. No one's interested in Ben Shalom talking about undercard fights. You guys aren't interested in me talking about undercard fights. You're interested in me saying something controversial about someone else, getting a soundbite or some clickbait to talk about another promoter. And that's what is part of the game. It's never personal. But also, you have to understand that when you make poor decisions, or you do something wrong, or you say something that's incorrect, you get the backlash that comes with it. So he's never really had any backlash. The only backlash he had was around the Fraser Clarke stuff. And that was pretty minor, really, but probably felt like the end of the world. When I was starting out, things would happen then that I would feel like were the end of the world. And actually looking back on it now, it's completely irrelevant. But over the years, it's a bit like playing high-level sport. I remember saying to Steve Davis once, my godfather, when you're down and you're potting the black to win the world championship, how do you control the nerves? And he just went, to be honest, he went, my nerve ends are burnt to a cinder. He says, I don't even get nervous. It's just, it's just what you do. And that's the same with this stuff. So, I'll never, I see from the interview, how it's affecting him already. The fact that that's affecting him, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then eventually you get to a stage where you could not give a fuck. And that's where I'm at. And that's particularly where, although you'll see him get angry, Warren and Arum, they're things just bounce off them. Do you know what I mean? You imagine all the abuse I get. Yeah,
Seen it.
it's never nice, but at the same time, it's like ping, ping, ping. Yeah, one might go through. Sometimes when you read something, you think, why would you, or you get a DM or someone tries to abuse your family or whatever. Like, but ultimately, it's just, it's the game. It's the game you're in.
A couple of quick fire things, Eddie. Who stands to be Anthony Joshua's next opponent, and is it pay-per-view?
Pay-per-view only for a specific few. And at this stage, being this close, I don't want to talk on behalf of the zone, but I would think unlikely unless you could find a relevant opponent. And I'm not really interested if it's pay-per-view subscription. I just want to make the fight, and that's the aim for this week.
Tyson Fury has a big announcement.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a big announcement just could be a fight. I guess he wants to fight in September, October. Maybe it's a UFC fight. Maybe it's WWE. Maybe it's just a normal fight at Wembley. I don't know.
And lastly, look, where does it leave Dillian Whyte if he's not getting the Anthony Joshua fight? I doubt you'd want to leave someone who's a pay-per-view, does pay-per-view to go and sign with another company.
That's up to him. We've always been fight by fight with him. It's difficult at the moment, like we can't give Dillian Whyte, obviously it's box Tyson Fury, the AJ fight's not going to happen. It's not Wilder, it's not Usyk, Joyce is fighting Zhang, Dubois is fighting Usyk. So it's just that treading water fight that's difficult in terms of the value that it delivers versus what he wants to get paid, because he's a big name in the division, So it's finding the right fight. He needs to fight ASAP, and if that's with us, we'd be delighted.
Conversation, Eddie. Cheers. Appreciate you.